A great analogy that can easily be tied in with people is that every person can be described as a different book, each book containing a different story, and more often than not carrying vastly different rising actions and expositions. However, despite how our stories have started, as we go through them, many of our lives have been moved by other books and people alike. This project has been inspired by this very concept, the fact that all our lives are equally as complex as one another, and yet the stories I'll be highlighting have all been moved by one book, one person, one true God. These are the leaders of Navigators here at Ball State, and these are their stories. Welcome back to the Nav's Living Legacy Project. I'm Thomas, people call me Tojo, and I'm with my friend Mark Ryan here to really dig deep into the word surrender.
Oh.
A loaded word.
Yes.
And Mark, if you could just tell me like a brief overview, like why is knowing surrender or what that is important? Specifically, why is it important to surrender yourself to God?
Sure. I think it's very important because Jesus says it's important. He talks about laying down our life. He talks about casting away your old self. There's all these languages about how the Bible says, put off old, take on new. And I think that it can be summed up in one word, surrender. And I think that's why it's so important.
Now, before we do a deeper dive into what surrender truthfully means for you, just give a brief overview. What kind of have led you here? What has all together your a little bit about your testimony, a little bit about your growth here at college. What is that summed up as into?
Okay. Would you like me to just talk about college and how I'm here, or
everything? Before coming to college, how it's shifted in college, little steps about Mark Ryan.
Yeah. I was born in Colorado, and I have a twin, also have a little brother, but my parents divorced when I was 6, and I moved to Indiana when I was 7. I was Christian my whole life. I grew up in the church, had it around me, and I've just been out and about a lot. I moved to Carmel when I was 12, and in high school I really developed a habit of reading the Word, but I wouldn't say it was a habit of faithfulness. I definitely went through some stuff in high school where I just had the wrong perspective on who God is and what He does. And it kind of got me into trouble because it ended up being just me doing that. And, but I was seeking the Lord, but not really. It was interesting. So in college, that really going into college, your life becomes your own, kind of.
You're more independent.
Right. Independence. And everything you do starts to matter for yourself. And I had kept in that same mindset in high school to where it kind of just kept not really moving anywhere. And I was just kind of didn't really have the right perspective yet. And that all changed beginning of my junior year, where for some reason, all of a sudden it just changed, where I was actually pursuing the Lord and who He was and who He is, what He does. And this was an amazing time in my life where it felt like my eyes were opened. And ever since, I've just been living the new life without ever looking back, because it's just been amazing. Yeah.
You mentioned there was just a change when everything happened. Can you perhaps maybe elaborate more on
Sure.
How did you feel? What events led to it? What was that like?
Right. It was so I kind of just started to trust something to God. I had feelings for somebody. So I'm what if I trusted that to the Lord? What does that look like? And one of the first phrases I would tell myself and then pray was, not my will, but yours. That make me want what you want. May what your heart is be, may my heart become that. That's a lot of phrases I just said, but that kind of encompasses it. And what I asked for, I received, where it was no longer my doing, but it was God bringing it up within me. And that it was that's what changed, is where I began to seek what I did, or tried to seek what I felt. in him. And like eventually it became life, is that I sought life in him rather than myself. And that kind of goes to surrender in a way. But yeah, that is my elaboration.
The plot thickens. That's like, I had never thought about that. Like when you said, not my will, but yours. That takes a lot of faith, trust in the Lord. Like to do something like to follow that phrase to its truth.
Right. It's like jumping in the deep end and you don't know where the bottom is. It's like,
so were there any like things in like earth or the life at the time that was just like things you want to hold on to that made like surrendering yourself hard?
Patience. Hardest part. Like I feel like probably for a lot of my older life that the hardest thing for me to do is to wait. Like it's just like I feel like, well, I could be doing something. I always feel like I have to be doing something. Like if I'm not busy, what am I doing? You know. But having to wait was hard. I'd say that was like the hardest part of that process.
What do you think is the cost on someone's personal, spiritual, physical, mental health if we happen to like fall short of lacking in patience? Like what could lead to like what issues could happen because of like being impatient with the Lord? Or
my experience in high school, this is when I didn't, have that patience, where I was impatient. And what I'd end up doing is just trying to make it myself. Like, fine, I'll do it myself. And like I'd try to make things happen. Never worked out. Like it always went so bad. And like it was frustrating and it felt hopeless in a way. I'm like, gosh, like whatever I try to do just doesn't mean anything in the end. But that felt really dark, but I mean, it was. Like,
like I'll be honest, my darkest times was probably when I was a high schooler too. Like I understand the feeling 1000% of just like, I will shoulder this by myself because that's what it feels like the right thing to do. I can't lean on anything but myself. Therefore, I will do it myself. And that mentality is very, very self-destructive.
It is.
It's very self-destructive.
Yes.
It can lead to so many different things. And let's be honest, like at the end of the day, like what makes surrendering so hard is at that point in those positions is the only way to remove yourself is to want to be removed.
Yep.
Right. So if you wouldn't mind digging a little deeper, like you said, dark times in high school, can you elaborate a little bit? I'm going to say elaborate a lot.
Sure.
But
that's fine.
Can you dig deeper on like what those times were like?
Yeah.
Maybe?
I mean, it was also, so I talked about like I learned what surrender meant because I had feelings for someone. In high school, it was also because I had feelings for someone where I didn't surrender.
Casually.
Yeah, I know. Like being a teenager guy, it's just like, ugh. Anyway,
it's worse than a lot of things.
No, not
there you
really.
go, a straight white male and teenager. It's a struggle.
Oh my gosh. Well,
that's taken.
Yeah, because like what I do is like, oh, she doesn't like me back. I'll just wait and try again. Like I'm gonna do it better next time. That's not how it works.
I'm gonna do it better next time.
I know. Like that's what happens when I'm like, I can do it. Like, I got myself into some sticky, not great situations.
Tell me more. Give an example.
All of her friends were like, "Stay away." I'm like, okay. I'm looking back. I'm like, gosh, like,
were you a red flag, right? Mark Ryan?
Like my friends were like, I mean, we know you have good intentions, but what you're doing is weird. Yeah, like, exactly. And back then I'm like, no, it's not. I thought this through. It's like, anyway, very bad things.
You say you're doing bad things, and then you're just like, it's just like, what'd you do? Was it just chase a girl? Is that it?
Yeah, it was being told to stop and not stopping. That was the bad thing.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Impatience and pride, probably.
Exactly. That's what it came from.
Dang. And how long did it take you to like really move on from that lifestyle? Too long?
I'd say I was in that for like 2 years.
Do you regret the moments though?
Well, Looking back, no. I'm like, well, of course I needed to go through those for where I am now.
What was like the biggest takeaways from living that lifestyle for so long?
Immediately, it was just like, I learned what it's like to wait. Like I experienced what it's like to wait for a long period of time, and then I was able to do it to an extent. But like now looking back, I'm like, gosh, like it's just like I get to compare life now to then. There's a lot of value in showing how like this is what happens when you take it by yourself versus this is what happens when you go to the Lord for all things. I mean, that's part of like the before and after testimony kind of thing. It's like there's a very nice like, oh,
where it flips.
Yes.
What do you think is your testimony? Your main
testimony?
Like jump through all this?
I mean, it'd be about learning what surrender was and how it came from just a small place of feelings for someone to the largest place possible, which is life. And like, once I learned what it's like to surrender something and for it to be, or what God promises, like, that he'll take it and make it his own and like give it back to you, to experience that with one like idea or thing meant, oh, I could do this with anything. In fact, I believe that we're commanded to do it with everything. Yeah. And like, that's that flip. That's that change.
Now, the feeling of like knowing the importance of surrendering, and your life has really built you to learn more about that. And I was just wondering, what do you think it costs to know what you know now, and good or bad?
Sure.
You know, bad relationships, good relationships. What did it cost you to know everything about surrender? Because, you know, like I think we're put through trials and people come in and out of our lives and things come in and out of our lives for a reason. But what do you think was the main, like, keeps in cost? Like, what it cost you?
I mean, like,
and sorry, what it cost you?
Yep. And
was it all worth it?
Well, when I think about the cost of it, I like to think that it was just my previous life. Was that I laid it down and that was my price. And God says, you've been bought with a price by Christ's blood. And like, it's been taken away from me. And sure, like that's a very broad thing. I don't know. Like, I think the cost of it is that I have to be patient, that I have to wait for things. And that even though I may have the capacity to do something, that is not the first thing I should do. There are situations where that calls for it, but I believe most of the situations I'm in, like, calls for waiting. Now, it doesn't mean I sit around and do nothing. It's a very cyclical thing, in my experience. That's the cost, I'd say. Those two things.
Now that you know and you overcome everything with laying down your past life, what do you aspire to do with what you know now? Like, hence, like, I mean, I guess what the question I'm mainly asking is, what do you plan to do with this living legacy of your own?
Well, because part of, at least how I see it, part of like the plan, I feel like if I made one, it would be not surrendering it, that my plan will be given to me by the Lord. But in my experience, it's been a very day-to-day thing that I don't know what each day holds, but each day is given to me as its own thing. And like, I mean, for example, I'm starting to meet with Silas and talk through purity, and like, I did not plan for that. Like that day, it just kind of came about. And I'm like, wow, that's awesome. Cause like, that's something it could be lifelong, maybe not, but like, that's what I can do with this legacy that you're talking about. But of course I want to do it, but like, it didn't come from within me. It was given in a way. So that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. Now, now that we've like went a little overview about who you are and stuff and where you've come from and how you lay down your life for God, I want to ask you a little bit about like some really tough questions about surrendering. Okay. That like probably like even me right now struggle with and probably people my age. And I really want to see if we can like really dig deep and hone in on these answers or on these questions. And the first one is like, these are more examples, and I just want you to see how you would approach them.
Sure.
So obviously you grew up with divorced parents, and there's a lot of struggles that come with that. A lot of struggles that would probably affect someone's faith and affect someone's willingness to surrender.
Yes.
And I was just wondering if you give me a little insight about how would someone navigate around that?
I don't know, because I've seen it happen very different ways with different people. Like I know that at least with my dad, like I wasn't really able to see him for like 3 years from when I was like 6 to 9 years old. And then he was not 3 years, a long time. And then I finally started being able to see him again. And now like I live half and half, but like the idea of that God is a father, and that if someone can't see their dad, that baffles me. I'm like, I don't know how that works.
That's a hard question. Right? Something we can dig deep on.
Oh yeah. And Jesus says Father to God all the time, and like Father in heaven. But at least in my experience, I don't think it necessarily affected the way I view God now. It's like, of course, like, it's strange thing I just thought about this morning was how like, ever since I've come to faith and like really like since my junior year, the same thing happened with my dad where like, there's the connection now. Like my dad and I, like we can talk about anything we want now. Yeah. And like, there's no barrier. And I feel like that's the way with God too now. And before both of those things, they had a little bit of a barrier. I don't know the connection of like having an earthly father and a heavenly father. Like what's that?
It's like, I think what you're alluding to is kind of like the reason why we should surrender ourselves to faith is because when we hold on to those like earthly values of needing a father or needing a mother, we're looking towards bonds that are presently being like mended in their own right through God's plan. And while we need to like have a way to almost raise ourselves, we can like surrender ourselves to God to lead us, to raise us, to be
for sure
the parents that we needed. Depending on how separation works, I'm pretty sure like there's definitely like separations that have gone really well, but I just think it's like a really hard topic for most. Like,
I mean, God isn't a replacement for my dad.
I know,
by no means, but there's ways to think about it that way.
Yeah. So now, these are like two sub questions for this, but very simple. Okay. This is a common ask, time to time. Why now and not later? Why is it important to surrender now and just like have the time of our lives in college, have the time of our lives in high school, have the times in kindergarten?
Kindergarten? I'm kidding. Running around the playground was great. I mean,
oh yeah, glorifying the playground, right? Okay. But why is it such an importance to, as soon as you come to know God, why is it such importance to surrender like now rather than later? Why not wait till after I do a bunch of bad things? Why not wait till after I commit a bunch of crimes?
I mean, I don't know where it's specifically, but if
you know like the book and general lessons you're drawing from, that would be nice.
You're right. You know, I'm terrible at specifically memorizing things in the Bible, but I know like I can paraphrase it very well. Okay. And but like Paul says,
if you could paraphrase it, I think I could like insert like exactly what the Bible is.
I'm pretty sure. Hold on. I'm pretty sure maybe Paul said, "Today is the day of salvation, not tomorrow." Now, like to me, I don't think there really is a now or later, because I could have gone through this process 20 years from now, and it is just as important then as it is what happened a year ago. But of course, like for me, it is like a daily thing where it's like, yes, every day is surrendered. And if I was like, oh, how about not today? It's like, ooh, like I can't imagine. But I think the importance does lie in the fact that we're just commanded to. I don't know why we're commanded to, but yeah, that's what I'd say. Paul said so.
And I guess the sub question is, what do you have to say to the people in my age or around my age that struggle or turn away from surrendering? Like they've met God, they see him, and they just choose not to follow or choose not to surrender.
This is crazy to me because I think what it takes to surrender is your heart, and you don't really. On my phone, the first home verse says, "A person's steps are directed by the Lord. How then can anyone understand their own way?" Proverbs 20:24. So those footsteps, and like Psalms somewhere, David says that God holds in his hands the hearts of all. And that it's like, it's about our heart, and God holds our hearts. And it's like, I don't know what it takes besides God doing it for me. Because I believe that if someone's like, well, if I can surrender, if I can follow God with all my heart, with all my soul, you're good. That's missing the point. Isaiah, might be Isaiah like 26 or 40, something says like, all the good deeds you have accomplished for us, Lord. It's like, at least in my experience, like all these ring true. Is like, it wasn't anything I did. It was what God did. Which in a way is trusting that that's what, there's just a switch of like, well then, if that's true of me, maybe God can do that in me. And that's when you trust that God can. And that's when you're like, God, that's where surrender comes. It's like, God, I believe that you could do this, but it isn't about like, yes, I believe, but it's more of like, God's like, hey, like, I'm going to produce good works within you. I don't know when, why, how God does it, but he just does it. And it could happen to someone when they're 5 years old. It could happen to someone when they're 75 years old. I don't know. It's scary to me. Like, we have no right to decide what our heart really is in terms of how God does it. But yeah, it's baffling.
No, God is a crazy and mysterious person.
Yeah.
1000%. Very cool, though. He's a very cool guy. In fact, I was about to make a joke that's definitely not allowed to be recorded.
Cut it out.
No. Oh, never.
All right, let's keep going.
My bad. So, just a quick overview and like summary, but like, how do you know surrendering is real, and how do you know surrendering is important?
Earlier I alluded to like a cycle of patience. I mean, the Bible always talks about like, wait for the Lord and he'll do something.
He'll show himself to you.
Yes. So basically what surrender does is like, for example, when I surrendered my feelings towards this person, they no longer were my own and they were given back to me as his. And what would happen is it's like, I want to hang out at the library with him. And then it happens. And then it's like, I felt like going to the planetarium to watch a show. And they were there. And I felt like asking them about such and such. And then it led to a great conversation. Like it was
with God? Good conversation with God?
No, with the person.
Okay.
So it was really about like, I was given these things that were meant for something in the future to fulfill them, which was awesome. That's why I'd call, in my experience, that's deliverance, is that you surrender something, God gives it back to you as his own, and then you wait for him, and then it delivers itself, and it manifests itself in like an event, an idea, a thing, anything. And like, now, I didn't go out with this person, but these things really just glorified God to me. It's like, oh my gosh, like God does this. He makes my life his, and like he does brilliant things. So I'm like, so like a more practical example would be I had to get an internship for the summer in fall. And I had 3 months to like put out my resume, get interviews, talk to firms. And I wasn't getting anywhere, but I'm like, well, God's going to put me where he wants to put me. Like, God, lead my footsteps. Like, it's not my will, it's your will. And just trusting. And like by the middle of April, I had nothing. Like there's no outlooks that were positive. There's nothing that was open to me. And my mom was like, hey, you should check out the firm that's like 5 minutes from our house. I'm like, okay. So I walked in there and they talked to me like they already hired me, and it was perfect. I'm like, pfft. And like, I was just waiting for the Lord because he gave me this desire to work over the summer. And I'm like, well, I'm going to let it play its course. And I landed the internship. I was still able to go to STP, and like they paid me well. Like it was great. I might go back too, you know? And then here's another example. At STP, like all of a sudden during a quiet time, I'm like, I need to buy a car. It was just given to me. I wasn't planning to think of that or whatever. And I called my mom. We had this great conversation about like, well, yeah, you probably need a car. And I just waited and trusted the Lord, and like we were car searching with my dad and just not really jumping on anything, and just until like something just aligned itself. And then 2 weeks after I had that feeling, I bought a car. This was like bread.
Wow.
Yeah,
just said bread.
And like that happens with everything.
Yeah.
It's just, I'm excited for when that happens to me, where all of a sudden I just have this like new thing, and I'm like, ooh, what's God gonna do?
What's God gonna do?
I know. So
cool phrase. But I think something that you actually sparked 3 things I want to explore furthermore. But the first one, I'll start with what I first wrote. But it seems like there's a very big importance in Muncie. They call it quiet time. And where I'm from, all the way north at Fort Wayne, so far, like at least 75 minutes away or something.
I thought you were going to be like miles or hours.
Minutes away. And super far. Yeah. I'm from a long, far place. That's why I have this tone. Tone as in voice.
Okay. Yeah, the Fort Wayne accent. I can recognize it from anywhere.
You can recognize it from everywhere.
Yeah.
Anyways, but what is the importance of like essentially when you do quiet time with God, you are taking a moment to surrender yourself purely to Him. What is like important to like further blossom your faith through that?
Through a quiet time.
Or talk.
Yeah.
Time alone with God.
Yeah. In John, Jesus says what the Holy Spirit does. It said, the Holy Spirit can only speak what it hears. Which basically means like, well, you're not going to audibly hear something if there's nothing to hear. And that's why the word is so important, because with the word, I mean, the Holy Spirit speaks what it sees. That when you get quiet time in the word, like the Spirit moves you in that way. And sure, it could happen with people when you talk to people. Like for me, the Holy Spirit, it feels like a contraction, but also an expansion at the same time in my heart, but also sometimes my head, sometimes my whole body. I talked to Zane, he's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, sweet. It's not crazy. I don't know. But like really just trying to seek that out, like seek the Spirit and what it has for me. And like, sometimes at quiet times, it doesn't do anything. Yeah. Sometimes it does. And
it always does something. Shut up.
Oh, sure. Like even when we don't see it, he's working. But yeah, that's why it's so important to read the word or like pursue God, is that's how you find life, is that the Spirit is like, ooh, this, or like, ooh, this. And you're like, oh.
Mark, you have a charm that is unparalleled. So I just have to ask for it. That, Mark, now going back to when you mentioned STP and your car and surrendering your God in general presently, ever since you surrendered yourself to God, what has been like the hardest event or moment to still keep on surrendering?
Yes. I'm actually going through it right now. I have two people in my life that are very close that don't know God. Like, they think they do, but they don't. Or at least I think they don't.
What are the names?
You don't have to say it. But like, to just see their struggle, they are their own worst enemy. I'm like, yeah, that's actually true. But you don't see the way out. You just think if you tried harder, like I did in high school, that it'd work out. And it just keeps getting worse and worse. And it's like, that's so hard to just keep it before the Lord and be like, I know that God will have his way. He does what he pleases, and that he will glorify himself through anything. And it's so hard for me to see it because it's someone else. And I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know their heart, except I just see it. And I'm like, even when I talk to them about it, it's just their heart is hardened. And they don't understand, and they don't see. I'm like, oh, it is hard to surrender that, because I can just try to do these things. Like, I can be like, well, if you read, if you just understand what I'm saying, oh, if only you did. No, it's like that. Even though I have the capacity to do that, like, that is out of surrender to the Lord. I don't do that. Now, maybe tomorrow, 2 years down the line, that could be out of surrender to the Lord when I do say those things. But right now, it is to do not nothing, but like to just keep praying, or praying meaning like I'm just trusting, and it's hard. But yeah,
it's 1,000% hard. I had this conversation with one of my friends at Purdue, and he is a youth pastor leader. He's a youth leader in a sense, and he leads a church down in Purdue, and he also has that struggle, and it hurts my heart to hear it, but he's trying to help these kids just, know more about God and whatnot. But I think there's a commonality between your story and what I'm hearing. He holds close to my heart, and it was a little hurtful to hear about it, because I want to see them thirst. I don't want to see it like the whole Samaritan woman story. Like, you want to give them the living water.
Yes.
You want to give them water they'll never have to thirst again.
No.
And it's just so hard. It's just like so heart. A good phrase, analogy. It's so. It's so gobsmacked to feel.
Okay. I understand what that means without knowing.
You feel so gobsmacked hearing and seeing them constantly do things that make them thirst again. Yeah. And
yes.
I probably could have explained that a lot better, but
I understand.
What would you what would you have to say to people that are also in that same position?
I think it just goes to the fact that you can't do it. That is why you feel terrible, because you cannot succeed. Only with Christ can you succeed. By letting go of yourself, not like giving. Well, I thought about it as like, yes, give up. But like, you don't tell that to someone who's really struggling. But like, it's true. Like, give up trying. Seek the Lord, and he will try for you. He will fill in everything you failed. And like, it'll just become new, and it'll become good. And
it's kind of going back to your patience thing. You can plant the seed and you can water a little bit more, but sometimes you don't have the opportunity to really watch it grow. And you just got to trust in God and the fellowship of the world that we can grow these things together, even when we're not there. That last part was really good. I loved it. That was, man. Remember this part for review. Now, going back to, again, when you mentioned STP and surrendering and all that process, you mentioned something so cool, the word deliverance. And those two words, you might think they're very similar, but I think me and I you and I both know there's a big difference between the two. Can you elaborate?
Between surrender and deliverance? Okay, yeah.
And discuss the importance of deliverance too.
Well, I'd say deliverance is the result of faithfulness, of surrender, of trust in the Lord. And I think I love deliverance. Like that's sometimes when I like pray or like I ask God for the feeling of deliverance, but I'm like, I mean, sure, I can ask for that, but like, it's not about that. It's about God's glory. But like, I want to feel delivered by him being glorified. But like deliverance is just when it just all makes sense, where it's just like, where that it's fulfilled, where like there's closure, where everything had led up to that moment. And it's like, wow, like that's what it was for. Like, wow, like that was awesome. And I've experienced it. It's a very cyclical thing. Like at least what God is doing in my life, like there's periods of time where I have to do the trusting, the surrender, the faithfulness. And then all of a sudden, boom, like whoosh, deliverance. I'm like, whoa, and it's amazing.
You by far will have the most onomatopoeia in your interview.
Okay, great. But I'd say like the last time I felt that was like an overwhelming sense of deliverance was probably when, well, honestly, when I broke up with my ex-girlfriend. But that's a very weird way to put it. But like, it was just like everything had built up to that moment where it just all made sense. And of course it was sad. Of course it was hard. But like that feeling of being, that deliverance was like, man, like I'm not upset about it. I'm not angry. I'm like, I'm content. I am happy that I'm in this moment.
Yeah.
But yeah.
You know, speaking on exactly what you just said, deliverance is a really beautiful thing.
Yeah.
It really is. I have felt it a couple times to myself, but we can talk about that later.
Okay.
But it's just now I'm hearing what deliverance looks like and feels like. I'm starting to recognize why my trip to Asbury, Wilmore, Kentucky was so beautiful. And I think I felt what you're describing, but I didn't know how to describe what I felt with words. But when I went to Asbury, I had the opportunity to talk to so many people, be that bubbly person and whatever people want me to be with people. But in reality, there were so many stories. Like I recognize at Asbury, there are so many stories that could be told to me. And I have the opportunity to listen. I have the opportunity to be surrounded by people that are all going through different struggles, different levels of struggles, different struggles in general, not comparable. And the fact that they're all gathered here for the same reason, lost or found, they're there. And there was a section when I went into the main hall. It was absolutely beautiful. It was absolutely gorgeous. I made it on time to be there during golden hour. So those windows were absolutely beautiful and everyone worshiping. It's crazy. But there was a half hour where people of adolescence got the opportunity to come up and share their testimonies. But more and more I realized that they're not just testimonies. They're like different beauties of deliverance in their own lives. And the one I want to focus on is like, there was this girl who had so much pride for her faith, but because of the amount of pride, it was like asserting that dominance between I'm better than most Christians. Like I do all this, I check all these boxes and then some, but that's not what faith is like mainly about. It's a really good job, but it's like about like having that balance of letting pride and God work through you. And when she was telling her testimony, that's how she's telling him like where she's coming from. She had realized coming to Asbury that she's been putting too much pride into being better, because we're all in fellowship. And she was being prayed over by a random stranger. And in that moment, she's like slowly letting go of this pride and realizing she's been holding on to it way too long. And at the end of her story, or she was like, sorry, at the end, I'm not doing this justice. At the end of her what she was talking about.
Yeah.
And after a conversation with the one-on-one of a stranger, that's the beauty of Asbury. These are strangers talking to each other, praying
Yes.
over each other. The person was like, after she officially, like he could like feel her realizing and letting go of this pride, that he said, "Welcome home, my daughter."
Mm-hmm.
Like my beloved daughter, welcome home. And that feeling, like even I'm just
right there.
I'm just some stranger in this hall listening to this story and realizing like people of truthfully different walks. Like I'm struggling trusting God, and she's like putting too much trust in God to the point where she thinks she's better than people. Like there's truthfully a whole spectrum of people who struggle.
Yes.
And that beauty of deliverance happens in all of us.
Yes.
It's crazy.
That's right there, man.
And another beautiful thing about Asbury is that I made it a point to not get anyone's contact, not get anyone's number, not get, even though I had some of the best conversations ever, it was so important to me that I have like, I guess a little start to my trust and surrendering in God. I'm still struggling because I definitely like, I have an overwhelming anxiety and a lot of trust because I'm always focused on the future, focused on never the present. But the Asbury was a good start because I was able to realize that the reason why I didn't get anyone's contact or anything is that it's such a beauty of knowing that these people exist. And it's not my job to document their lives or keep up with them because I want to learn more about them. Because at the end of the day, our journeys are personable. They're personal to us. And knowing that these people, their struggles and what they've overcame, knowing that they just exist is a beauty in of itself. And we can't put everything onto ourselves, even though we often try to. And coming to Asbury, knowing no one and still knowing no one, but just stories, it's just so inspiring because these people with debatably a lot worse lives or debatably a lot better lives than me, they're still all overcome and come to have the beauty of deliverance in every single way.
You got it. That was awesome.
Nah.
No, that's beautiful. Like everything you're saying is just spot on. Like delivery.
It's crazy. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. That's probably the last time I experienced deliverance, but that's not even me. That's not even me.
No.
I probably couldn't pinpoint when I got last delivered. I will say it is hard to really like surrender yourself because I was talking to one of my another nav leader who I've grown closer with, and it like she popped the question like I tell like putting God as my firm foundation, which is just another way of just saying surrender yourself to God.
Sure, it is.
So your roots grow from something solid. I told her I've been on and off with like having God as my firm foundation. Like she asked this question. It was like, have you truthfully made him your firm foundation this entire time? And I was so struck in awe because I like the thing is because like I'm pretty easy. I can navigate through my head and my emotions pretty good aloud. But when she said that, it made me really think, have I? And that's like, it's such a huge question. Like the fact that like I can safely say so many things and then like that one question that's very simple, like it still had me like a little shaken. Like it's so simple, yet I felt like I couldn't answer it. But I didn't answer it. But I vocalized it to her like, wow, I haven't maybe, I don't know. And I guess that's just something we as Christians, especially at the start where we're trying to make big jumps and find where we belong. What do you have to say to those people? I guess it's just me asking for advice, but what do you have to say to the people that are on such a tightrope where maybe their firm foundation is brittle dirt and they keep tripping and falling in their lives? Like, what is that? What do you have to say to those people?
I actually told another nav leader this at the end of the school year or this semester, and like a good analogy that I like to think of, like what is it like to just throw yourself at the Lord and like, take me? You know, when you're little and you like grab onto your dad's leg, he just carries you.
Like one leg wobbles around.
That's what it's like. Like you just hold on and never let go. And like when I pulled up the verse on my phone, it says the person's steps are directed by the Lord. So like treat it like that, where like you're just holding on and where you go is where he takes you. And you're like, I don't want to let go because like it's my dad. Or like, not like actually, but like that's what it feels like. It's just that unwavering. Like you're never going to let go ever again. If it doesn't feel like that, I think there's still more to grow. There's still more to explore.
1,000%.
Yeah.
Now, as we're coming to a close of this interview, there's a couple things I want to go over really quick because I think it's really fascinating, really cool. But first off, is there anything you'd like to pitch that you would think that would help our fellow navigators right now if they want to explore this topic more? What can they do as a source or a resource?
A resource. Definitely try to understand what the Holy Spirit is, because the Holy Spirit is what replaces what you surrender, essentially. And I think really diving in and just asking God to give you understanding and give you direction. I think that's probably the most practical way I could put it. Because like the whole process, again, like it's not about what you did, it's about what God is doing. And hopefully that's that. Yeah, that's what I'd say.
Oh shoot. I'm mistaken. There's one topic that I had not thought about to cover.
Okay.
And I think you like this one a lot. But I can't believe I forgot about this, but it's just such a basic one.
That's okay.
How can prayer help you surrender to God?
Ooh. Prayer is a very fascinating topic to me, because before prayer was like asking God for things. It's like, yeah, he can give you things. But what if he doesn't give you that? Because John 15:7 says, if you remain in me and I remain in you, ask whatever you wish and it will be done for you. You're like, well, I asked that my mom would get healthy from this and she didn't. It's like, that happens to people. Mm-hmm. Does that mean God doesn't exist or that he just like doesn't care about you? And so like there has to be somewhere where there's like where that verse is true. And there has to be a reason why people don't live out that as truth. So prayer for me is just, if I have a prayer request, like for example, right now, I'm hoping that when I meet with Silas later to go talk about purity, like that we would just learn from each other and just understand each other. Like, but this isn't from me. Mm-hmm. It was given to me because I surrender that time. Like, I'm like, God, this is your time. And he gives it back to me as like, again, it's that feeling that leads to something here that is delivered. So prayer is not about asking for things. It's about being given what to ask for in a way. It's about trusting that God will do it, that he will do what he says he'll do. Now, of course, that doesn't mean we can't like not ask him for anything, because sometimes maybe it could be like, God, I need a car, but that feeling was given to me. That's why when people are like, I look at these people who are so passionate about asking for things. I'm like, maybe that's what God is doing in their life. Great. But to me, like, it's just not the same for me. Now, that doesn't mean either of us are wrong.
Yeah.
But it's just the way God uses himself in prayer. Prayer is fascinating to me. It's like, what does it really mean? But that's what I think it means. It's just about lifting up what has been given to you to ask for, because that's fulfills John 15:7, where if you remain in me and I remain in you, you'll be given those things. Ask for whatever you wish, and it will be done in that feeling of deliverance later. That's my experience with it. So.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be sure honest with you, Mark. This doesn't happen very often. Mm-hmm. But I can tell something's happening. I'm slowly growing more every time I have a conversation.
Yeah,
but
great.
My heart just grew a lot lighter just a second ago. That's just for me to note. But anyways, dude, I'm so appreciative of your conversation. Now, I usually end these little talks with sources you can find. And now, obviously, there have been people that have led you to understand your word a lot more and dig deeper. Mm-hmm. Who in your life has helped you figure out along the way what surrender really means? Who's helped you the most with that?
The funny thing is that it wasn't that nobody helped me, but it was that people have set me up for what God did. Mm-hmm. So it was God who helped me.
Yeah.
But like Logan, he set me up to experience this. Mm-hmm. Everything, this was before I was surrendering. And I used to dread a meeting with him. I love meeting with him now.
Yeah.
But it is that's not right. Something is off. If that's that feeling. So I was like, well, why is that? That's what really led me to seek answers. But and then my dad, when I was going through the process of letting go of my feelings for someone, and God or dad also was thinking about someone at church, and we just got to talk about it a lot, and we just bounced off of each other, and things I would say, you'd be oh, and things he would say, I'd be oh. Just learning about what it was like to surrender. That was a good one. So yeah, Logan, my dad, and those are probably the two that popped into my head. So.
Logan or your dad? If you had to choose one that helps you more than the other in a mental plane,
sure.
Who would you choose?
I'd say my dad.
Your dad?
Nothing against Logan, of course, but it's my dad. He's my father. Of course I'd choose him.
The OG Ryan.
Yeah, basically. I mean, he's so cool.
Now, the reason why I asked this question is, can I challenge you to call him right now and thank him?
Maybe. He'd be oh, cool. Hi.
Hi, Mark.
If he doesn't.
Hey, Mark.
Hi, Dad.
How you doing, buddy?
I am well. How are you?
All right. Doing all right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Very nice. What's happening?
Well, I was just calling you. I'm talking with my friend when he's interviewing me and stuff. And
Silas?
No, this is Tojo. I don't think you've met Tojo. I haven't really talked to him.
Right.
But he's very cool. But
cool.
We were just talking, and it kind of came up of I just wanted to let you know that you're the person who's really led me in becoming who I am. It's just the process we both went through last year. It was just calling each other and talking about just learning from each other. I'm bruh, it's just and especially our conversation over the weekend, from where we are now to where we were before has just been incredible.
Awesome.
So I'm gonna say thank you, but I mean it's all the Lord,
Amen to that.
Yeah,
it totally is.
And it's awesome.
God's favor on you.
Oh, and you too, bro. So
I appreciate you calling, man.
Yeah. Well, thanks for picking up.
Cool. Well, I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Have an awesome day, bro.
Yeah, you too.
I'm gonna call you Wednesday.
Tomorrow?
Oh, dang! It's already tomorrow. Yeah, to work on the
the FAFSA
thingy.
Sure.
Sound good?
Yes, sounds like a plan.
All right, bro. Thanks for the call.
Yeah, you're welcome.
God bless you, man.
You
All
too.
Right.
Bye. Nice. He's so cool.
Now, what's your social security?
It is
well, I'll be honest, I forgot how I ended the last conversation with Trevor. Mm-hmm. But Mark Ryan, it has been such a pleasure to talk to you today. And I really hope a lot of you, if you have time, depending on when this video comes out, feel called to get to know Mark Ryan as I have. I am Tojo, but my real name is Thomas. And this is the Nav Living Legacy Project signing out today.